sexual assaults.
Police say the assaults have mainly occurred at apartment complexes in the area of Huebner and Babcock Roads.
Since January, we've been reporting on a series of attacks on women in that area.
The latest in what appears to be a series of rapes dating back to at least January.
Serial predator, sexual predator.
It's been about 2 months and police are still investigating recent sexual assaults in the medical center area. They are also still needing leads in response to surveillance video of a possible suspect.
This morning, an 18-year-old San Antonio man now charged in a 7th case connected to several rapes over in the medical center area. Anton Harris.
18-year-old Anton Harris.
Anton Harris.
Anton Harris.
New details this noon in the case of Anton Harris, the accused medical center rapist.
You've heard his name extensively throughout our KSAT coverage, and you'll hear about Anton Harris a lot more in the coming weeks. He's accused of terrorizing the medical center area for about 2 years. But it wasn't just the northwest side that was on high alert. The search for the attacker garnered the attention of the entire city. After months on the run, then 17-year-old Anton Harris was arrested on June 8, 2017. As he awaits his fate, we take a look back at how this case has played out so far.
A shuffle to a police car is worlds away from the walk 18-year-old Anton Harris took recently across the stage to get his diploma. Police say it's because of what he did outside the classroom.
A serial predator, sexual predator who was working up in the medical center area.
Chief William McManus announced his arrest last night in a story we've been following for months. Women attacked at several apartment complexes there.
And that's what made this case so difficult. The area was very wide.
The fear also was widespread, but now so is the relief.
Good. I'm glad they did because everybody was worried.
So glad they caught him because it was very scary, especially for single people.
Harris is charged in 4 rapes and 1 attempted rape. One happened 2 years ago. Police say there may have been more. We've learned that up until a few days ago, Harris was a student here at Marshall High School. A Northside ISD spokesman confirms that he was in the graduating class earlier this week. This is also where police collected some of their most key evidence tying him to this case. An arrest affidavit says detectives already were looking at Harris as a person of interest, and they obtained a cup and straw he left behind on a school table. The affidavit says DNA from that matched the DNA from the crime scenes. Now the new graduate may be looking at a future behind bars. Katrina Weber, KSAT 12 News.
Just 1 day after his arrest, our KSAT team got their hands on court documents detailing the disturbing way Harris carried out the crimes. Courtney Freeman studied those documents where police say he confessed to some of the assaults.
Some were raped, some were robbed, but all were scarred by the attacks. Officers explained in these affidavits during a recorded interview Thursday after his arrest, Anton Harris admits to several of the specific attacks. He confessed he used a knife on May 19th to threaten a woman and ran when a car came. The victim in that case told police she was in her car and someone was trying to open it. When she got out, a man was crouched outside and attacked her with a knife. Over a 22-month period from March of 2015 up to last week, Harris's DNA was linked to 6 assaults at medical center apartment complexes. On June 3, 2016, a woman let her cat out of the apartment and then heard a scratching sound at the door. When she opened it, a man was crouched outside and forced his way in with a knife. He stole cash from her and then raped her. December 22, 2016, a woman heard a series of knocks at her door. She didn't see anyone through the peephole, but eventually opened the door. She says a man in a hoodie and mask forced his way in with a knife, took her cash, and raped her. A similar story just a month later on January 15th. A woman heading into her apartment turned to find a man pointing a gun at her. She was robbed and raped as well. Then just last week, another woman was held at gunpoint walking into her apartment. She says the attacker stole her iPhone and mini iPad and then sexually assaulted her. In yesterday's interview, Harris confessed to using a knife and handgun in the attacks, to having sexually assaulted a woman on May 28th and other women dating back to 2015.
In August 2019, Harris went before a judge pleading guilty, hoping to strike a deal that would have sent him to prison for 40 years.
Anton Harris, who is accused of threatening and sexually assaulting at least 5 women, with a guilty plea in court today.
We came to a plea agreement with the state of Texas. We accepted the plea agreement, and it's going to be up to the judge whether he's going to follow that, and we've been reset for sentencing on August the 20th.
I've explained to both parties that I may accept this offer, I may not. The court does have some reservations about if this is enough time, looking at these and face the indictments, the amount of victims that were involved.
The decision was left up to Judge Frank Castro, who spoke with the victims who strongly opposed the plea deal. In a rare move, Castro rejected the Harris plea. A big factor in his decision was the fact that Harris initially said that he was innocent in his pre-sentence investigation, and so the trial began.
Also in court today, jury selection beginning in the case of the alleged medical center rapist.
This is video from SAPD officer Angela Murray's body cam as she responded to a call for a sexual assault at a medical center apartment complex. Her first contact, a nurse who told her she'd been raped and robbed just minutes earlier.
They said, "Oh, your cash." And they said, "I have no cash. I only have cards." They said, "Take my card, please, and you have a gun." And he had me at gunpoint. And he raped me.
Due to the nature of this case, we're not identifying the victim. Crystal Maltez was among the first witnesses in his trial. She was the victim's apartment complex neighbor and heard her scream for help.
Can you describe the scream to the jury? It was just like a yelp, like a scream, and then it was like a shortened scream followed by a second scream. What did you think when you heard that scream? I didn't know what to think. I thought it was odd. I heard banging on the doors, and someone was banging on all the doors asking for help. I knew that was definitely not normal.
And then a loud banging on her door.
She goes, "Please, I was raped." I'm like, "What?" And I'm like, "Oh my God." And at this point, she was standing in front of my door. I pulled her in, and she was crying.
Kimberly Petta's late-night walk with her dog would ultimately give police the break they were looking for as they investigated a series of sexual assaults in the medical center area, according to prosecutors.
I saw this male all of a sudden kind of pop out of the big bush that was there. There's also a tree right next to it. And it startled me, and it also startled my dog.
What was he wearing?
A gray hoodie that looked like it zipped.
As she hurried away, Petta said her dog kept barking.
So I pulled the dog. My instinct was to pull my dog and get control of my dog. I didn't know what he was doing.
Her description matched what another woman reported her attacker was wearing when she was raped while going into her nearby apartment 3 days later. And it fit the description of Anton Harris, 17-year-old recent graduate of Marshall High School. Anton Harris was 16 years old when the series of rapes began. He was arrested in June 2017 following his graduation from Marshall High School, where he was a star basketball player.
He always said yes sir, yes ma'am, and was polite. We never had any type of issues with him.
Olendek, Harris's basketball coach, provided police with a big break in the rape cases.
Do you see your former player in the courtroom here today?
Yes, sir, I do.
And if you would point to him, sir, and identify an article of clothing that is wearing, describe the clothing.
Looks like a navy blue tie and a suit. The kids are in our program. All the coaches know the kids very well from the time they come in. He had a positive relationship with coaches and with players.
He was showed this picture taken from a gas station security camera near the apartment complex where a woman had been raped.
When I first saw the picture, I looked at the face and I thought it looked like Anton. And when I scanned the rest of the picture and saw his legs, because he's wearing shorts, I knew it was Anton. In the athletic period, in the weight rooms and that, kids are wearing shorts every single day, so you see them all the time, and I could just recognize the structure of his legs, and then also match with his face.
And did I hear you say that sometimes you drop him off at home?
Yes, sir. Usually if that happened, my assistant did that, but I would pick him up oftentimes in the morning for weight room.
And do you remember where you picked him up at?
The apartments off of Eckert Road, going, I believe it's the Plaza de Ville, I think is what they're called.
With that identification, detectives obtained a warrant and searched an apartment that Harris shared with his family in the medical center area.
We were looking for items that were used in any of the crimes, any weapons, since some of them were involved, and in any property that was taken from any of the victims. There was like a rose gold colored fossil watch that had like a gemmed face to it.
That fit the description of a watch the woman Harris is on trial for raping said was stolen. The search also turned up 2 guns, a knife, and a gray hoodie. In most of the rapes, the victims reported that they were attacked by a slim African-American male wearing a gray hoodie who brandished either a knife or a pistol.
This case is about Jane. It's about what happened to her on May 28th of 2017. And what happened to her was every woman's worst nightmare. She felt safe to park her car and walk into her apartment. But her nightmare started when Anton Harris showed up.
I didn't even see him. I parked right over there. He busted in and I tried to shut the door.
With the covers over her head, she told you she could feel the gun against her skull as the defendant's penis went inside of her. Not only did he threaten her with the gun, but he threatened her with his words too. Shut up or I'll kill you. Shut up or I'll kill you. He said over and over. She told you that it took all the courage she had to take the covers off of her head and to run to her door half naked and lock it before that man could come back inside and kill her. She mustered up the courage to take the stand and to tell you what happened, and now it's your job to convict him.
Attorneys for 21-year-old Anton Harris argued that the state did not produce a single witness who could identify their client as the rapist.
People jump to this conclusion because it's a young black kid and he lived in that neighborhood and he was walking around in a hoodie. Must have been him.
I am very scared right now. I am scared that justice will not happen for Anton. None of these sergeants, none of these detectives, none of these reporting officers could ever tell you it was him. And unfortunately, the state's key witness, Jane, she couldn't tell you it was him.
Prosecutors conceded that the victim could not positively identify her attacker. That's not necessary, they told the jury. Clinical technology took care of that.
You can rely on the DNA in this case, that Anton Harris was in fact the individual who raped Jane.
They have to prove each and every element beyond reasonable doubt, and they have failed to do so. And really, this was a rush to judgment, as my co-counsel said. And remember, the DNA expert who testified just yesterday, how fast did they whip her along? They didn't even qualify her as an expert. I had to ask about the publications for review, published articles, and Monica, what she said was exactly right. She said there's a chance for human error, and most importantly, she also told you guys it could be rare, but 2 profiles could match. How scary is that? How scary is it to be 20 years old in this chair, looking at spending the rest of your life in prison for something you didn't do? Keep that in mind. This is going to be a very important decision for you guys to make, and I want you all to take your time back there.
Deliberations are underway for accused medical center rapist Anton Harris. We have the latest coming up. First at 5, after 5 hours of deliberations, a verdict has now been reached in the trial of accused medical center rapist Anton Harris. We now have the verdict. It is guilty.
Anton Harris has been found guilty on both counts of aggravated sexual assault and aggravated robbery.
When a defendant is on trial, he's given 2 options before the trial even begins. He can either choose to have the judge decide this punishment or the jury. If a defendant asks that the jury decide his punishment. Then it becomes what's called a bifurcated trial, a trial that has two phases, the guilt-innocent phase and the punishment phase. So in this case, after he was convicted, we had the punishment phase.
The victims of Anton Harris have been shattered.
Though Harris was convicted in only one rape case, prosecutor Elena Altis was talking about 4 other rape victims' cases for which Harris has been indicted. Each victim testified during the punishment phase of Harris's trial last week. One of them, accompanied by her service dog that she's had since the attack, was in court for Harris's sentencing, as well as the woman who'd identified Harris as the man who'd groped her in 2015.
I was walking up the stairs. I felt someone grab and put their hand underneath my bottom. He locked eyes with me at that moment and had a smug kind of face like, yeah, I did that.
She identified Harris in this mugshot several months later and in court during Harris's trial.
Point to him and tell us what he's wearing.
He's wearing a gray suit.
Both sides can present evidence during the punishment phase. That gives the jury a little bit more insight into who this person is. Prior to the punishment phase, they just were aware of the first offense for which he was on trial.
Defendant has sentenced each one of those women that you heard testify to a life sentence. And he deserves a life sentence.
The state can present additional evidence, which includes those extraneous offenses, to bolster their case of asking for a severe punishment. In this case, they ask for life.
This body cam video was recorded by an SAPD officer in 2015. He stopped Harris and another teen near a medical center apartment. The officer was investigating reports that a woman in a nearby apartment complex had been groped by a teenager as she walked to her apartment. Harris was questioned briefly, then released.
Any extraneous offenses cannot be brought up during the guilt-innocence phase of the trial by law. That comes during the punishment phase of the trial.
How did you know it was Anton Harris that you stopped?
When we approached him, asked him for identification, which he identified himself, and one of the officers that showed up to the scene actually had worked with him at Peter Piper Pizza prior to becoming a police officer.
What did the defendant say he was doing?
He was going to meet up with a friend for to play video games.
Was that information consistent with the information relayed by Officer Morgan?
No.
What did that inconsistency mean to you and your task force?
It made us want to look at him a little further.
Conversely, the defense has the opportunity during the punishment phase to present what they call mitigating evidence. Something, perhaps the individual had a terrible upbringing, had a bad childhood, any number of things that they would consider mitigating evidence. They can present that to the jury in hopes of swaying them to go a little bit easier on the defendant.
We are going to respectfully ask is that you assess a sentence of 30 years prison.
By their verdict, the jury obviously rejected that. Here's how it breaks down. 99 years in the aggravated sexual assault case and 60 years on the aggravated robbery count. Those sentences will run concurrently. Harris will not be eligible for parole until he served 44 and a half years in prison.
Though this case is closed, there are still 4 more up in the air and 4 victims looking for justice. So what's next? I sat down with Bexar County District Attorney Joe Gonzalez to see how he plans to handle those cases. He tells me he's weighing 3 options.
We are going to look at these other cases to see whether or not we need to go forward and go to trial on the rest of them.
Assistant DA Darrell Harris was the lead prosecutor in the first case. He said he's ready to go to trial in the others.
That's the approach we're going to take, and then we'll make a legally appropriate decision.
The second option would be a plea bargain.
And we're not going to resolve them with some minimum sentence if we think the right thing to do is to push them to trial.
The third option, though not likely according to Gonzalez, would be to dismiss the cases. A key factor in making a decision is the victim's input. For them, since they already told what happened to them as they testified in Harris's trial, a trial would mean another trip to the witness stand.
You have to obviously prepare them, but you also don't want to re-victimize them every time you do.
Harris recalled what one victim said following Harris's trial as the best case scenario in resolving the cases.
I believe one of them summed it up saying I did get my power back. I can make that statement that I'm no longer a victim, I'm a survivor.
Gonzalez said that he's considering two things before making his next move: the victims themselves and the safety of the public. I'm Paul Venema, and this has been The Backstory.